What do you got there, Ruby? What are you munching on? Crazy dog. Good afternoon. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you might be. Hey, hey. Just out for a little walk with the dog. Gonna do a quick live here. Meeting a friend for dinner, so I can't stay for too long. Hey, how you doing? It's funny, my dog just found some. What is that you got there, Ruby? What is that? Oh, it looks like a penalty flag or something like that. Hey, hey, how you doing? Hello, everybody. Happy Friday to you, wherever you might be. I've been listening to lives again. I listen to too many lives, obviously. I tried to cut back for about a week. I cut back and then I just got right back on this week. So the more I listen to these arguments from the Zionists, I tell you what, man, it really boils my blood. I can't even imagine if I were Palestinian, if I lived either in the West Bank or Gaza, or if I had family, I would be so incredibly pissed. I'm pissed off as it is. I just can't understand. I just heard an argument made by a guy named Amir on SoCal Smitty's Live. And the argument is you can't deal with radicalized people. These people are just too radical. You can't have peace with them. Why do you think they're radicalized? You think they just come out of the womb as like these crazy, crazed people that just want to harm others? No, you dumbass. It's because your people, the one that you think is the best people in the world, came into someone else's territory and you stole their land. You literally kicked them off at the end of a gun, and then you further mistreated them. And if they have if they dare to fight back, you crush them, put them under very oppressive conditions, and say, well, these people just can't be dealt with. We can't do. These people aren't peaceful. We can't deal with these people. And then you got the United States, which went on this massive propaganda campaign that has been forever to vilify Muslims. Let's face it. Every villain in a movie where there's quote unquote terrorism involved, it's a Muslim, right? It's a Syrian, or it's a Moroccan, or it's one of these evil people, an evil Palestinian. Give me a break. The reason people get radicalized is not because they're evil, it's because there's evil shit being done to them that they're responding to. That is the bottom line. And that point gets lost on those who are supporting Israel. Like this woman, Daniela, have you ever heard of her? I think she's kind of vile, but she's a human being. So if you haven't heard her, she's hard to listen to. But she said today on New York City Joe's, I tried to go on and speak, and then of course they just personally vilify you. Like I'm not going on Pro Israel Lives anymore, by the way. Not because I'm not don't want to go on there and have a good conversation. You just can't have a good conversation. They make it into a personal attack. So I'm not going to complain about it. It is what it is. But I'd like to go there and have a good exchange of ideas. But for Christ's sakes, man, all they do is just pound you for anything they can find that they want to vilify you for. So I could do that to them. I have dirt on all those people. I just don't bring it out in public. I don't think it's necessary. But it is what it is. Anyway, she was saying that they chose, this is her saying her words, they, meaning the Palestinians, chose to attack Israel on 10/7. So they started all this. Well, I tried to get these, I didn't get a chance to get these words out, but what I wanted to do was to invite Daniela to go to Google or whatever search engine she prefers and type in, is blockade an act of war? Is blockade an act of war? So to say that the people of Gaza or that the more militant members of the H group started this thing on 10/7, there was an existing blockade, a siege on Gaza. That is an act of war. Anybody who's occupied or blockaded by international law has a right to resist that. How does that get lost somewhere? How can it be that they just everything was great on 10/6? It might have been great for you, Daniela. You might have been chilling in your beautiful place, living the life, while other people 30, 40 kilometers away are suffering. But for them, it wasn't okay. They've been living under oppression and getting murdered and having their kids killed and people just, mistreated on every level humanly possible, making their lives as miserable as possible. Why? Because they want the land. They want to make people miserable so that they will leave the land. That's it. It's clear as day now. You can't hide it. They actually have documents that have been released saying as much. But to say this then started on 10/7, how absurd is that? It's just it's a joke. So I'm just kind of disgusted by all this. The more I hear about it, the more the arguments makes. But now we're starting to hear, well, gosh, there's all these other conflicts around the world. Why do you focus so much on this one? I just heard that on Smitty's Live today. I wasn't on the panel, but that was directed towards the rest of the panels who were talking about this. Yeah, I get it. There are other conflicts to talk about. The reason why we're not talking about many of the others right now is because they're not in our face. When you see video day in, day out of buildings coming down and young kids being squashed and women and other innocents, what are you supposed to do? You can't just look away from that. Oh, let's talk about baseball. Who's in the draft this year? Other stuff. No, I mean obviously it's going to get talked about, right? So this idea that everybody just wants to hurt the Jews, right? This concept of this. I want to talk about this today. I made a video yesterday. I just thought it was just too controversial to put it here on TikTok. And I don't know why it is that some subjects just can't be talked about on any level. Some things are just socially unacceptable now, especially in the United States, where if you go public and sort of challenge the narrative about certain things, you're like ostracized. You're put out on the edge of society, like, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, whatever, hate-filled person. Bullshit. Bullshit. No issue should not be able to be talked about, in my opinion. As hard as it may be sometimes for people to hear it, or as uncomfortable as it may get, including me, right? There's things I've done that are stupid and are deserving of attention. They're fair to talk about it, right? Shouldn't hide from it. And sometimes if things are, they say the truth hurts, right? Well, a lot of these subjects, it's hard to speak about truth because it's looked at as an unfavorable attack on a broad group of people. I get it. But I think at some point, if we're going to watch this world go by the way it's been going and let things continue to happen, sort of passively, it's going to hurt a lot of people. We're already seeing what's happening in Gaza. It's just one small example. They talk about the fear of Vladimir Putin crossing over the European continent, that's the big fear. Bullshit on that. You know what the real problem is? The real problem is Zionism and the movement for the support of power for Israel and the greater community that believes in that crap. That's spreading through the world. It's infected aspects of the U.S. government, the U.S. political establishment, the financial system. I mean, duh. And those forces coming together bring about potentially great harm to the things that's infested. For example, I can speak to my country, the United States. And by the way, the U.S. has its share of horrific things it does as well, which are obviously clearly worthy of condemnation. We're going to focus on this issue right now. And many of the things the United States does is driven by these same powerful forces. Let's face it. What our country does is do the bidding of the wealthy and powerful. That's it. Full stop. Always has, always will. It's just there are different versions of who takes those reins of power. This nation was founded on Christian principles, which I'm not a Christian, but I understand the history of that. And look what we're doing now. Who are we serving now? Why is the United States backing up a state, a very small state from a population standpoint, that's a thug, a rogue actor, that goes out and murders people day in, day out, has been for decades, and that is sort of orchestrating a massive campaign of genocide, unaccountable, with a rogue leader who can't be reined in, giving them tens of billions of dollars to support it, and providing political cover at the UN. What the flying fuck? Right? What the fuck? And the fact that the United States, our citizens here, are sitting here sort of looking with aghast, those who have a clue, many don't, unfortunately, but they do know money, and people know that our money, quote unquote, as taxpayers, is being sent to shit that doesn't help the public. And think about it this way, if you're traveling around the world as an American, well, you're not exactly everybody's pal right now. I mean, let's face it, Americans are identified with supporting Israel. And all the money we do around the world to vilify people who practice Islam. That's what America does. And I think most people get it, that most people are peaceful. But still, just like people complain about anti-Semitism on the rise, anti-Americanism is going to be on the rise too. And it should. I wouldn't blame anybody for hating on Americans. And I'm not happy with Americans. I wish that more of us would speak out. I'm obviously somebody who's, this has cost me dearly. It's cost me with family. It's cost me with friends. It's cost me a lot in terms of my, just my station socially where I am in life. Not that I had a great standing before this, but anything I had left is gone, shattered. And there are very few people who will even talk to me. And you know what? I have to live with that as a consequence of being willing to speak up about something that I see that's hard to acknowledge, but is, in my opinion, true. And I think in the long run, people will figure this out. As history starts to unfold, they'll start to see it for what it is. That this is an orchestrated campaign, a very specific and intentional set of processes that are unfolding before our eyes. And it's having the exact desired effect. It's all this money being used for foreign wars to go and attack the Islamic nations and try to take over energy, resources, and control systems. It's happening. It's happening. It's very effective, by the way. If you're going to look at it objectively without the evil, you got to give people credit. It's working. I just happen to find it reprehensible. And I don't know what else you're supposed to do. Sit back and shut up. I mean, in the United States, if you tell, like, look at, I'm just going to give you a couple names. I'm not saying that I agree with all of what these people say, but I am going to say that I admire them for their courage to speak out for what they believe. Guys like Nick Fuentes and Stu Peters are two people who I have tried to do some observation of their work, just from an objective standpoint to analyze it. I don't agree with Christian nationalism. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I don't believe in Jewish supremacy. I understand it. I don't agree with it. Okay, so to that extent, I don't really understand their driving motivations. I do know they want to have a country that's free from influence from a rogue group of a small set of people that steer us in the wrong direction that doesn't help the vast majority of citizens. I'm down with that. That makes sense. And so for those of you who think this is driven by hate, I get so many people saying I'm anti-Semitic, that I hate bullshit. I have none of that going on. Give me a lie detector test. Have somebody come. I'll pay for it. If I pass, which I will, you pay me back. How about that? I'll make that deal for anybody who's watching that thinks that's what drives me. It doesn't drive me at all. What does piss me off is see the disintegration of a country that should be great, that should help its people, that's not for so many reasons. And by the way, if you didn't see Stu Peters, he was on Alex Jones's podcast or whatever you want to call it. And I know Alex Jones has his own set of baggage. And trust me, it's, again, looking at people that are on the edge of society and their views, a lot of stuff they say I don't agree with. You don't have to agree with everything somebody says to listen to them just because everyone else marginalizes them. And what I did notice, and I don't know if you saw the interview, it was amazing. Alex Jones, somebody has gotten to Alex Jones. Somebody somehow. And I'll tell you why I believe that. Every time Stu Peters brought up issues related to what he believes to be Zionism and how it's negatively impacting our society and all these different power structures we refer to, Alex Jones would make a really strong point. Well, what do you hate all the Jews? You think it's all the Jews' fault? Like he would say something as if he was working for, I don't know, the devil's advocate for someone who's doing a critique. And Alex has definitely gotten a message from somebody that you need to start speaking up in a certain way or you're going to be, no longer. Something happened. All I can tell you, because I know how Alex has spoken in the past. I'm not a big fan, but I followed his work on 9/11. You kind of keep an eye on somebody in the corner. He's changed. His language and his use of sort of criticism has changed dramatically towards Israel and towards Jewish people. And I'm not saying that Jewish people, I'm talking about Zionist Jewish people. So Stu Peters was trying to get out, his specific point of view. He's like, listen, it's not Jewish people, it's Zionism. It's Jewish people who support Zionist policies and Zionist aspirations that are the problem. But every time he tried to get those words out, Alex would interrupt and says, well, what are we supposed to eliminate all the Jews? We're supposed to kill off all the Jews? And Peters is like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's the Zionist elements. This is Stu Peters saying. I'm saying it's the Zionist elements that have infiltrated American society in the West that are controlling things, steering the ship. Listen, Kanye West is a jackass the way he talks. Okay, I don't think he has much of a clue in terms of his, and maybe I'm right there with him in terms of being a jackass, but I don't think I'm quite as bad as he is. Try to be a little bit sensitive to people's feelings and try to think a little bit before I talk. And I think what he said, the way he said it, about his observations of, what he just used the word Jews, which I think is wrong, because I think there are a lot of decent Jewish people in the world that are kind and friendly and family, just like you and I. But there are a lot that aren't. There are a lot that maybe unknowingly support evil shit, or maybe they knowingly support evil shit, or both. Who knows? But either way, it's bad because it has a lot of power. But Kanye West said he's going to go DEFCON 3 or DEFCON 4 or DEFCON something on the Jews. That's an idiotic thing to say. But you should say that Zionism is a negative influence that is having a bad effect on most Americans. I think that's a very reasonable statement to make. The question is, what in the F are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about this? We have a good number of people that serve at the highest levels of our government that have dual citizenship with Israel. What are we going to do about that? These are the most powerful people in the history of the world that are using their split loyalty to support policies that are not good for the future of our country. We could get bombed or invaded because of this shit if it spills over into a broader conflict. And what did the average human being in America do to deserve this shit? Nothing. In fact, we've been taxed at a more increasing levels over time, And more of the money that goes into our tax base is being diverted for psychopathic policies like this. And then what do we get on top of that? We get attacked and bombed because we're on the wrong side of history. And you know what? We would deserve it. Not the people in the country, but the country itself deserves to get bitch slapped. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. Whatever comes America's way, we've been sowing a lot of seeds of evil in the world for a long, long time. And so whatever happens to us, unfortunately, is well deserved. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope we can right our ways. I hope we can find a way to steer the ship in a different direction. But people like Stu Peters and Nick Fuentes, they use language that I wouldn't use. They say it in ways that I think are, not necessarily the easiest way for people to digest their message. But I think the veracity of their message is in there at some point. And I don't know about the rest of you. I just want to see people live lives of peace. I don't want to vilify people who are Arab. I don't want to vilify people who are Jewish. I don't want to vilify anybody for anything. I just want us to get along and be decent to each other and not bomb and kill each other and not try to dominate each other, take each other's stuff, try to subject their people to exploitation. I don't want that. And why is it that some people have this driving force to want to do that to others? That's what lies at the root of all this. It's the mindset, the belief system, the idea that someone's superior to the other. Why is it that some Jewish people think they're better? Why does their Talmud say that non-Jews are scum that can be killed off with no question at all because they're not worthy, because they're not Jews? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that okay? Why is that okay? That can't be okay. Well, how can people support that crap and not be called out for it? It's worthy of being called out. Somebody said in the comments, you don't support American veterans? How did you make that stretch? How did you make that stretch? I am an American veteran. Of course I support American veterans. I don't support the foreign wars that the U.S. sticks its veterans into, its current soldiers and previous soldiers. I was stuck in one of those damn wars. Okay, so whoever the person was that said that's absurd. I support the soldiers who are just trying to get through life without dying, maybe looking for an opportunity to make their life better because their economic conditions may have sucked. Or like me, they graduated from college, they had a scholarship, and they served in the military as a part of their service requirement. Right? That's part of the American experience for many people. I'm not proud of my military service per se, but I'm not ashamed of it. But to say I don't support veterans is absurd. I work with veterans groups. I try to help other veterans who are struggling. I've gone to what's called the VA Farms program, which is where you go out and you teach other veterans to how to do, things like sustainable farming, that kind of stuff. Good stuff for people who suffer from PTSD and other emotional problems, which I have too, by the way, from combat. So yes, I support veterans. But no, I don't support the nation state whose leaders decide to put people through a meat grinder for their own geopolitical aims. I don't support that. And I think that's a fair distinction to make. And just like with Israel, we have American soldiers right now in Israel. In case you don't know, we have boots on the ground in Israel, American boots on the ground, people that are going to die and have died in this conflict. I'm against that. I'm against anything where you're dropping bombs indiscriminately on civilian targets. What the hell is that all about? Does that represent your values, Mr. I support veterans? Is that what you're all about? You can somehow find a way to justify doing that to another group of people, like in Vietnam. Are you for slaughtering villagers, men, women, and children, because you're frustrated you can't find an enemy who's hiding in tunnels? Is that what you're all about too? If that's what you're about, I don't support you. I don't support that crap. I don't think anybody who has a decent head on their shoulders should support that. What we're watching right now is a disgustingly shameful period of U.S. history. This is, by the way, remember Nazi Germany? Remember that where we said, why didn't people do something? This is our time for that. This is the time where people like you and people like I have to stick our necks out and say, no, this is wrong. Now, was it difficult for them to do that? Maybe impossible? Yeah. Is it difficult for people like you and me to do that? Yeah. It's dangerous to put your name out there, to speak loudly to power. It's probably going to result in harm of some type of, maybe I'm got an X on my head. I don't know. And if I do, so be it. We're all going to meet our fate at some point. Never going to be able to last forever. But for Christ's sakes, I'm going to go out on my legs and not on my knees when I do. So if somebody says, so I'm not pro-America, I'm against the policies of the government of America. I'm for the continent. I'm for the beauty of the nation. I'm for all the good people in the country. I'm for fair and peaceful, mutual benefit. I'm for all those things. I think those things have been lost in the American experience as industry and special interests have slowly but surely taken over the entire country. We have an oligarchy now, if you don't know it, that controls 99.9% of things that go on in the country, between lobbying, special interests, super PACs, money is speech, corporate personhood, and the influence of groups like AIPAC, where the entire establishment is sort of in this mindset of neoconservatism, those that make the real decisions. We have a permanent establishment within the government that was not elected that gets to decide what we're going to do, who we're going to surveil, how we're going to use propaganda, who we're going to attack, who we're going to undermine, that nobody votes for. I don't know about you. I did not vote to support 500-pound bombs dropping on buildings in Gaza. I never got a chance. Nobody asked me. I don't know if anybody even asked you. So listen, I can't be for any nation state that supports these policies. It just happens to be the one that I'm in is America, United States of America. But you have to be true to your principles, not to your country. The Constitution even suggests that we, the people, if we have an oath and we support that Constitution, I took an oath when I went into the military, that we would support the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I would argue that people who are proffering policies that support killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians and are okay with subverting governments and fighting proxy wars where hundreds of thousands of people die towards our interests, those are enemies of the United States. Those are enemies of peace. And those enemies, it's our responsibility to rein in those negative aspects of our system. The question is, how do we do that? And should we do that? I think we have to find a way to do it because the path we're headed down, or what it appears to be, is one that is going to not work well for the future of the country. The average person in our country is going further and further and further away from having a reasonable life. Now, granted, we're living at a higher clip than many people throughout the globe. I acknowledge that. And I'm appreciative for everything that the country has given me in my life. You know, the comforts, the conveniences, the political stability, you know, the lifestyle, all these things, you know, education, safety, family. I'm for all of these things. However, I don't want these things if the price to have them is destroying other people's lives, subjecting them to exploitation, stealing their stuff, murdering their families, taking their shit, supporting genocidal regimes. If that's the price to have what I have, I don't want to have those things at the expense of those things. Maybe you do. Maybe you can go to bed at night and be like, whatever, dude. I'm just happy to have my life. F everybody else. That ain't me. That ain't me. Somebody says, relax, son. Listen, I care about these things. I don't know how you feel. I'm kind of passionate about them. I don't talk much about them. And every once in a while, just the totality of all the bullshit bubbles over. And I just got to talk about it. And if you don't want to listen, if you don't enjoy hearing me say it, swipe the fuck on, as they say. Swipe, go listen to somebody else who's a little more calm and peaceful. You know, check that person out. There's plenty of them. There's people that are just selling smartphones on TikTok and selling accessories. Go watch their bullshit. Go watch QVC on TikTok. But anyway, so I give a shit. I don't talk like this because I want to just be critical for no reason. I just want to bitch about everything. There's a lot of good here. There's a lot of good here. I just drove somewhere in a nice electric car to go get some medication at the VA that I take, which is good for my mental health. I'm very appreciative for that, and the taxpayers pay for that. Right? It's not that I think everything is bad, but I think it's fair to point out the most poisonous aspects of our society that are only going to make things worse for the average person. And I could very much go out there and just run a business and make a lot of money and just look the other way and say, fuck it, fuck everybody else. I'm getting mine, so be it. And a lot of Americans do that, who have the capability and the privilege to do those kind of things. I have an MBA in finance that I got. I could be working for $500,000 a year for some corporation if I wanted to, very easily. Could drop all this shit, take my resume in, get a job in a week, and be making a ton of money. But I'm not doing that anymore. That's how I lived most of my life, thinking that that was the path that I needed to take, because everybody told me that the point of life is to go out, start a business, make money, and live the American dream. Well, guess what? That's not so dreamy when you actually do it. It doesn't provide any satisfaction. At least for me, it didn't provide any fulfillment. You know, I had different businesses that did really well, made a shitload of money, and guess what? Didn't make me any happier. What does make me feel good is just being who you're meant to be. And for whatever reason, I was meant to talk about this stuff. I've learned a lot about it, and I just got to talk about it. If I don't, I'm a fraud. So if you disagree with me, that's fine. Let's come up and talk about it. Come on the panel, tell me why I'm wrong, and tell me what you think is different. I'm okay with listening. Hell, I might learn something from you that makes me change my point of view. I'm okay with that. But I think I'm onto something. I mean, I'm at the place where I recorded one of my very first videos as to why Israel matters to the United States. I'm standing in the same place I was about 4.5 months ago. And that video got 1.3 million views. It's the biggest one I've ever done. Another one I did was why was Gaza, why did Gaza attack? Why did the H group attack Israel? Like, where did it all fit into things? What was the purpose of it all? And I think, listen, if you're wondering what's up with the H group, if you're somebody here who thinks that H group can only be condemned. Somebody asked me yesterday, do you condemn the H group? Do you condemn? I don't condemn the group. I condemn some of the tactics, and I condemn any harm to civilians by anybody who does that during a conflict. I think civilians should not be purposely targeted by H group, by Israel, by anybody. And it shouldn't be justifiable to go after a single target and take out 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 civilians. That is illegal according to international law. There's a care standard you have to deploy. And we're not doing that in the United States, and Israel certainly isn't doing it. And we're the ones that are giving moral lessons to the world, saying, well, we're the authority. You people shouldn't. Bullshit. We are no moral authority. And people here are duped into supporting a system that is not indicative of their own individual values. I guarantee it. How many people want to fire at a wedding party and kill 60 innocent people to try to get one guest at the wedding who might be a problem for the United States? How many people believe that a journalist who simply published insider information has now been in jail for 12 years? 7 of them spent at the Ecuadorian embassy under lockdown, and then the last 5 years at Belmarsh prison, the harshest and most toughest prison in the entire United Kingdom, for the most dastardly of criminals, serial killers, mass child molesters. And you got a journalist. All he did was publish information on a website and speak truth to power. And he's completely under the threat of 170 years in prison if he gets, what's it called again? You get expedite. No, not that word. You know what I'm talking about. I just can't think of it. Extradited. That's what I was looking for. Sorry, brain fart. Yeah, Julian Assange. Probably one of the biggest heroes other than Edward Snowden in the history of the country in the most recent years. The guy had courage. The guy had balls. The guy spoke out constantly. He said that these wars, if you haven't heard him say this, these foreign wars that we're engaged in are not meant to end. It's not meant to win. They're meant to go on to wash money out of the tax bases of these Western countries that participate. What does that mean? They're using the money that is supposed to go to the war effort that's somehow substantiated through the propaganda of, good guy, bad guy, for companies to get their weapons sold at exorbitant prices, their bombs and munitions and systems, to the government. And who owns those systems? Well, they're publicly traded companies. And that money doesn't go to the country. That money goes through the weapons manufacturers. And who owns the shares? That same oligarchy that controls everything. How many people among that oligarchy are Zionist supporters? Many of them. You talk about these numbers, getting back to the core subject of today's little rant. I don't want to say these things. I want to say nothing but good things about, people who support Israel. I'd like to say something great. Give me something to work with, for Christ's sakes. And I'll say it. Israel is a beautiful place. My parents visited. I'm never going to go. But I know people that have visited and they've said nothing but great things about the physical layout, the way the country is. It's a beautiful place. And they've done good things with the place as far as making it a fun place to visit. But that doesn't overshadow the harm that that country has caused in its establishment. Just because you've been able to make, quote unquote, make your desert bloom more doesn't justify the war crimes you're committing. Again, if you're willing to have the benefits, this is my moral standard. If you want to live better, great. But if you're doing it at the expense of others, murdering people constantly, making their lives abject misery so you can live better, that makes you a bad person in my book. That makes you a bad person. If you're okay with that, good for you. You have a different kind of conscience than I have. So, by the way, classified information, somebody says, what about the class? The United States has its problems. Listen, classified information to the U.S., the guy's not a U.S. citizen. You have a foreign national of Australian. He was born in Australia. He's an Australian citizen. He has the right to publish whatever the fuck he wants. He's not a U.S. citizen turning over, secret documents. Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, is the person who turned over the collateral murder video showing U.S. pilots engaging civilians. And then when an ambulance comes to help out the people that have been hurt by the same people, they engage the ambulance. War crimes, abject, just like we're seeing with Israel. Same exact playbook. And yet we try to be the moral authority. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? So if there's a world population of 8 billion people and 17 million of which identify as being ethnically Jewish, and then among that 17 million, I think 9 million or so live in the United States. Maybe it's 11. I don't know the exact number. But a very few small subset of that small percentage are in very high positions of industry and government that make a lot of the important decisions and have important influence over decision makers. Now, you can ask yourself, is that an undue influence from a very small subset of people? I would say yes, it's observable, it's mathematically accurate. Why can that not be talked about? Why, if it were people from Kenya or people who are from Asian descent or whatever it may be, if that same numerical observation were to be in place, why is it not allowable for that group to be identified where others would be equally identifiable? It's weird how we have, 1,100 people who are Chinese in our country that control 95% of the things that make a huge difference in how things are done in the world. Why is that not something that can be discussed? But it's off limits. Kanye West went there, boom, he lost every connection he had to social society. Anybody who even brings this shit up gets marked for, cancellation or worse. So, by the way, somebody says, wish Biden could talk to me. Biden's not going to listen to a goddamn word I have to say. He supports the same criminal syndicate, the same, you can call it a cartel. It might as well be. It's just one that is considered to be the legal version of it. But it's a cartel of criminals who use their power with banking and industry and connections within the military industrial establishment, the media complex, to run things. And they've brainwashed, 100 to 300 million Americans to support this bullshit. And I think that's destructive. And I think it needs to change. I'm not sure exactly how to do it because, again, having access to control the media system is a huge element of controlling the popular mindset. Just read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. I've talked about this ad nauseum, what I think it's going to have to take. And I think, unfortunately, and I wish this weren't the case, I'm trying to see how many people we have in here. We've got about 300 people. Thanks for being here, by the way. We're going to have to do some extraordinary things to change this. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty. It's probably not going to be changed. Probably what's going to happen with America is under the debt and under our hubris, we're going to get either attacked or reformulate our financial system through a devastating change, or probably some version of both. And that's what's going to cause America to go under, not some internal uprising. And look what's happening right now. There are people being brought into the country of military age, hundreds of thousands of them, if not over a million or so now. They're being put up in five-star hotels, having their meals paid for catered food, $65, $75 a day worth of fancy ass food. They're given free health care. They're given access to free telecommunications. It's absurd. And they're going to be by the way, they're being offered for serving in the military a chance for a fast track to citizenship. So if there is any kind of popular uprising, which I hope there can be, because again, it's all about achieving these more important goals. It's not about wanting to fight back or subvert the government. I could give a shit. If the government is doing a decent job of protecting the people, then great. But when it's doing rogue stuff to the benefit of the few and sort of throwing the country under the bus, that's bad. And I think it's worthy of the public. In fact, it's the duty of patriots in the country to step up, to call it out first, to have the bravery to call it out, and then to do something. Now, we could ask nicely. It'd be ideal if we can just say, pen a letter, an open letter in the New York Times saying, hey, Zionists, and those who support the Project for the New American Century, and all you neoconservatives that want to take over the fucking world and dismantle the Middle East and steal people's resources and dismantle Russia and overthrow dictators or overthrow leaders. Would you please stop that shit? Would you please relinquish some of the money you've accumulated to help the average person? Would you stop putting in place policies that make it impossible for the average person to keep their standard of living in this country? Would you please do those things? Now, what do you think they're going to say? They're going to laugh you out of the fucking room, right? So asking nicely is not going to do it. Now we talk about voting. Well, if we can't ask nicely, we'll have to vote in the right people to make these changes, right? Think again. The same forces that we're talking about have a very firm grip over the existing political process. The existing political process is not going to be changed from within it. Between special interest groups that are nation state oriented or business oriented or other, whatever the group wants to promote, the National Rifle Association, etc., there are things that 90% of Americans want that don't get put into law because of these influences. That's absurd. There is no reason why, 80% of Americans want background checks before you buy a firearm. That's not unreasonable, right? Something to prevent somebody who's mentally unstable for using one legally acquired for an atrocity. I think that's reasonable. I think most human beings, even staunch advocates for the right to bear, feel that way. It's like, hey, dude, if you're not doing anything wrong, why would it be unfair to have somebody have a little bit of basic, screening? It's not going to solve everything, but it could solve a lot of problems. And I'm sure, families who have been victimized, where their children or family members have been harmed by these policies being so lax, are all in favor of these things. We've seen, family after family after family devastated by this violence. And yet, because of the influence of industry and the money and the campaign, quote, finance system that is legalized bribery now, these laws cannot be put into place. There's a wall between the people, the constituents, and the ability to affect change in the political process. So what are we to do about that? Are we going to just sit back and take it? Just go, oh, well, that's just where things are. Tough luck, Charlie. Or are we going to come together and finally look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what? We're getting what we get because of how we're doing things. We're allowing this rogue group of people to fuck us. Let's face it, that's what it is. And at some point, you're either going to be their slave or you're saying you're not going to be. And each of us has to have that conversation within our family, within our community, and then decide what we're willing to risk to get better. If anything, maybe not. Maybe most people are just too afraid to do anything. We saw what happened with January 6th. You can get in a lot of trouble for talking about that on here. But for Christ's sakes, again, getting back to honesty, what did the government do? They made a serious example of people who even remotely participated in that days of activities. Just walking through the door after things were sort of cleared open got you, lengthy prison sentences. That's going to dissuade many people from even thinking about doing anything that might be against the system. Someone here says Trump will save our democracy. I bet every penny I have against that. Every single penny. And if you want to send me a DM, the absolutist, let's work out a deal. Let's have a lawyer hold the money. I'll bet you, how about $100,000? I'll bet you 100. You put up 100, I'll put up 100. We'll stick it in the bank with a lawyer. Trump's not going to save jack shit. In fact, the powerful interests are against Trump. Why wouldn't they be? They don't want some president to come in there and basically fuck things up. Why do you think they're going through all these cases, all these political cases to try to marginalize the guy? I believe the guy's going to be assassinated. I really believe that. But from an economic standpoint, he's cut from the same cloth. I believe in the national security state in terms of the direction of foreign policy. He's a thorn in the side of the establishment, that part of the establishment. But in terms of the landed gentry and the oligarchy, he's not a threat. He's not going to do anything to change tax laws. He didn't do it in his first term, did he? He decreased taxes on the wealthy and on some of the citizenry by a very small fraction. But something like 88% of every dollar that went to that tax cut went to the top one half of 1%. Is that Trump saving America? The regulations that were laxed under the Trump administration, they removed the need for inspections of train cars, braking systems, and the requirement to put in the most advanced braking systems, which saved companies like Norfolk Southern a shitload of money. It also caused a town in eastern Ohio to be destroyed forever, East Palestine, Ohio, and even the part of western Pennsylvania that bordered the state of Ohio. You can't live there. It's Cancer Alley. That is not saving the country. That's helping big business make more money. And you can say, well, that's good for the economy. Okay. You want to have people be the victims of disasters like that because you make an extra $3,000 a year? Is that what you're going to say? You're willing to sacrifice the lives of your countrymen and women and the kids because of your extra money? Come on. You can't be that bad, can you? So we have to figure out what our values are. If our values are fuck everybody, we're going to take what we want, America first, everybody can go to hell. Well, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to be first in that America first policy. You might get a little bit for a little while, but guess what? You don't matter. You and I don't matter. If you're somebody who owns a massive corporate business, you're making 150, $200 million a year, you matter. Okay, you're somebody making 60 grand a year working a regular job, they don't give a fuck about that. We're replaceable cogs in a wheel. If you don't believe that, wait. Wait as AI and automation start to chip away at the labor force in this country. Just wait. You'll see. You'll see just how much you matter. We'll see how much Trump saves the country. It's not going to save the goddamn country. The powerful forces that control the country, that's what has to change. I'm talking about the oligarchy that hoard all the money, that don't pay hardly any taxes, if any at all, a national security state that pulls all the strings when it comes to foreign policy and controlling domestic security surveillance. That's the power structure that has to be changed. And us going to the polls or us watching NFL football or watching the NBA All-Star game or watching Netflix is not going to do it. And while we sit back and bitch about it, you know what's going to do it? Action. You know what's going to do it? Taking risks. It's going to be organizing. It's going to say no mas. It's like a union. If the company's fucking the workers, they're making record profits, and yet they're paying their workers dog shit, like Uber does, you got to do something. You have to find a way to organize. And just like Uber has a bunch of independent contractors who don't know how to organize themselves, it's a great way for the corporation to make off with whatever the hell it wants. What are people going to do? You can either quit or you can take it. So are we going to quit or are we going to take it? And right now we're taking it. That's it. We're taking it. Now, I'm not some beacon of change. I don't have all the answers. But I think some combination of withholding labor, withholding taxes, demonstrating, meaning physical bodies out in the streets, blocking the arteries of commerce, because these people speak one language. They speak money. That's it. They speak money. Cutting off the means of commerce, which is the arteries of, and also not buying shit. We could, for 6 months, if we had enough people, we could not buy stuff. Don't go to Amazon. Just if you need something, just wait. Right? If we go a year, 6 months to a year, not buying corporate bullshit, don't go to a chain store. Just don't. What do we really need to survive? We need food. You may need medicine if you're somebody on medicine. You need water and you need air. That's it. And maybe a place to keep out of the elements. Go live in somebody else's house for a year if you can't afford your mortgage. We're going to have to do things that are very different. We have to think outside the box here. Doing the same old shit ain't going to do it. Think about your own life. If you're somebody who's overweight, when can you do the same shit and get your body in better shape? You can't. You have to make changes. Is it fun to eat different food? No. If you're used to eating like, KFC and Papa John's, which does taste good, right? You're used to that. Well, eating a kale salad sounds pretty goddamn horrible, right? You're like, no way. But we have to eat a kale salad to save this place. If you don't want to eat a kale salad, if you don't want to go through that pain and suffering, which is not that bad actually, then what the hell? You're going to look back at your kids and grandkids and go, you know what? This fucked up situation with central bank digital currency and digital controls and authoritarianism and censorship, it's all here because our generation enjoyed the last little bits on the tree and then told everybody else to go fuck themselves. That's the bottom line. And listen, I don't want to put this stuff out there. I'd rather go about my day and not talk about jack shit. I'll probably be in big trouble for saying this at some point because nobody wants to have somebody who's articulate and kind of sees the big picture, kind of explaining it to people in a ways that they can kind of say, I get that. Right? Not everybody's going to agree. Some people think it's just Jim fucking dandy here. If you're doing well and enjoying it, good for you. But it's not always going to be good for you. And when your time comes to be on the short end of the stick, you're going to be saying, oh shit, why didn't I do something about this shit? And most people say they love their kids. Everyone says they claim, my kids are great. I love my kids. I'll do anything for them. Kale salad, brother. Kale salad. All right, guys, I got to go. I got some places to go for dinner with a friend. It's nice having you here tonight. It was kind of a short and sweet message. Sorry if I didn't see all your comments. I'm not trying to ignore you. I'll be on again tomorrow at 12 noon to 4 p.m. Come check it out. If you're not following me, please do. I look forward to seeing you then. Take it easy.